Shakshuka is a North African / Middle Eastern dish in which eggs are poached in a bed of tangy tomato sauce. I know there are many variations of this dish, but my recipe is inspired by the time that I spent in Morocco, specifically my host mother Nadia's recipe. Think perfect runny yolks, warm spices, toasted bread. I bet your mouth is watering, because mine sure is. So let's jump into the recipe. To make this recipe, you will need a can of tomatoes, 6 large eggs, a medium shallot, a habanero pepper, 2 cloves of garlic, some cumin, red chili powder, salt, and pepper. And I like using shallots because they provide a much richer depth of flavor, but you can use any onions you have in your house. You start by chopping your shallots or your onion into a fine dice. If you're wondering whether to eat the center, the core of the shallot, which is usually a green color, that is the start of the stem basically, it is perfectly edible and I do not like wasting food, so I usually chop my shallots with it, but you can also remove the core before you chop the shallots in case you prefer that instead. I use habanero peppers in my recipe because my fiance is a spice monster. No, seriously, I thought I loved spices, but I'm not sure this man has any taste buds left. But that said, if you're not used to cooking with habanero peppers, there are many different ways in which you can adjust the spiciness of this dish. For one, you can still use habanero peppers, but simply just remove the seeds so that it's a little bit less potent. You can also substitute with a milder pepper, say for instance a jalapeno or a serrano pepper or even green peppers. Or alternatively, you can also substitute with some other type of a spice mixture, say like a harissa paste or even simply just red pepper flakes. Adjust the spiciness to your desired level so that you can enjoy this dish as much as you would like. Next, we're going to chop up the habanero. This is purely a preference thing. I like smaller bits, so I can be surprised when I bite into it and the heat kicks in. Said no one ever. I typically start out by smashing the garlic with the back of my knife so that it gets the skin out. And then you can either mash them up with the back of your knife, or you can chop them up into small dices. Listen, y'all, shakshuka looks amazing in a cast iron skillet. I know. However, the acid in the tomato base of the shakshuka could ruin your cast iron, especially when it's not enameled. So I strongly suggest that you use either a stainless steel skillet, or if you're using cast iron, make sure that it is an enameled cast iron like the one that I'm using. Start by placing a skillet on medium-high heat. Add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to start heating the skillet. Once the oil begins to heat up, add your shallots into the skillet. Give it a good toss and then add your habanero into the skillet. Allow the shallots to sweat for a little bit. I know it's tempting to add all the aromatics, so that's the onions, the peppers, and the garlic all at once. However, all 3 of those things actually tend to cook at slightly different timings. Onions need the most amount of time. Peppers still need a little bit of time, but not quite as much, and garlic needs the least amount of time. So I suggest adding garlic at the very end, and all you really need is about 30 seconds to give it a quick stir in the oil until it's fragrant and delicious. Next, add your spices. I usually start with a little bit of cumin, and then red chili powder. You can always adjust this to your taste. I love fresh tomatoes more than anyone in the world. However, for this particular recipe, I actually recommend using canned tomatoes because the tomatoes have been sitting in the juices for quite some time and imparts a much richer flavor to the dish. Once the spices are well mixed, you can add in your can of diced tomatoes. It is always important to season as you go along, so make sure at this point that you're adding in salt and pepper to your taste. Once again, give it a good mix and let this simmer on low to medium heat for a few minutes. I always like to taste the sauce at this point to make sure that it's seasoned to my liking before I crack the eggs. Okay, now we're getting into the most fun part of the dish, cracking the eggs. Eggs are the centerpiece of this dish, so make sure that you're purchasing high quality, really good eggs whenever you go to the grocery store. I know egg labels can be confusing, but if you're interested in learning more about what cage-free or free-range or double-A really means, feel free to check out a detailed egg label guide that I've created for you guys in the description below. Once you see the bubbles appear, it is likely cooked enough for you to start cracking the eggs. Using the back of a spoon, make a few small indents into the sauce. I like using 6 eggs for my shakshuka. I typically love to spoon a little bit of the sauce onto the egg whites in order to help them set a little bit faster. The shakshuka is done when the sauce solidifies around it and thickens considerably. However, you can always cook the egg yolks to your consistency. I prefer mine slightly runny, so I'm gonna turn the stove off right now. If you use cast iron, however, the skillet will continue to conduct heat even after you turn the stove off. You really don't need any garnishes for this dish. However, I do recommend that if you're in the mood for garnishing it, add a little bit of fresh herbs, maybe a little bit of crumbly cheese, as well as something creamy like an avocado. Shakshuka is one of my favorite dishes to make for brunch, y'all. But seriously, let's be real, like it's also a great breakfast for dinner dish. It's also great for make-ahead because you can simply make the sauce in a larger portion beforehand and then just crack the eggs in order to make it whenever you need it fresh. If you're interested in making shakshuka for 1 or 2 people instead of the recipe size that I've demonstrated today, I have detailed instructions on that in the blog post that's linked in this description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can learn more fun, global vegetarian recipes like the one that we just did today. And don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment as well, and let me know how the recipe went. Toodles!